ability to talk. Fantastic. Obviously, she's very attractive, very cute, but her views, her eliteness, her like, I know what's right and you don't, and now you want to apologize, bro. This is how the world works when you get on social media.
A Broadway actress who issued a post saying, F Biden supporters. May Biden or Kamala never have a moment's peace. That person would be fired so fast it would make your head spin. They wouldn't last one more minute in any Hollywood role. This is truly like, she has to go. I'm sorry, Disney. She has to go. And you're going to put out a Disney film with Snow White, a beloved American character, with a woman who hates more than half the country, the half that just elected Donald Trump. This is an incredible pivot point right now. We'll see which way the woke Disney decides to go.
Pay your f***ing writers, pay your f***ing actors.
Rachel Zegler has made a surprising U-turn, walking back her fiery rant about Trump voters and vowing to stay out of political debates for good. But insiders say the damage may already be done. Rumors are swirling that Disney executives are quietly distancing themselves from the Snow White star after months of controversy. With a $200 million production on the line, some are questioning whether her latest move is a desperate attempt to salvage her reputation, or if her Hollywood fairy tale is coming to an abrupt end. As the backlash intensifies, her career could be hanging by a thread.
Version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that. This
Battleground for a larger culture war. Critics accused Disney of abandoning its roots, while supporters praised the studio for pushing inclusivity and modernization. But as the backlash grew, so did the scrutiny on Rachel Zegler herself. Her comments about the original Snow White, calling it outdated and dismissing the classic love story, didn't sit well with longtime Disney fans. Many felt she was disrespecting the legacy of a film that had shaped the foundation of Disney's storytelling. Instead of excitement, her casting became a lightning rod for debate, with some accusing her of alienating the very audience that made Snow White a beloved classic. Then came the controversy over the Seven Dwarfs. Reports that the iconic characters would be replaced with a more diverse and modern group only deepened the divide. Fans who had once embraced Disney's live-action remakes like Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast now felt this wasn't just an update, it was a complete rewrite. Now, with whispers of Disney quietly distancing itself from Zegler, the future of the Snow White remake hangs in the balance. Can Disney turn things around before it's too late? Or has this reimagining of a classic turned into a cautionary tale of what happens when nostalgia and modern sensibilities collide? Rachel Zegler's journey from casting controversy to full-blown Hollywood lightning rod took a dramatic turn when she waded into political discourse. Following Donald Trump's re-election, she ignited a firestorm with a bold Instagram story, not only condemning the former president, but also targeting his supporters. Her now infamous statement, "May Trump and his supporters never know peace," spread like wildfire, triggering outrage across the political spectrum. The backlash was swift and chaotic. Conservatives condemned her words as an attack on millions of Americans, many of whom overlap with Disney's core audience. Almost immediately, hashtags like #BoycottSnowWhite began trending, with calls for her removal from the film. Even moderates who weren't Trump supporters found her rhetoric jarring, seeing it as yet another example of the divisive discourse that has left many exhausted. Meanwhile, progressives were split. Some praised her for speaking out, while others questioned whether such an incendiary statement did more harm than good, especially for an actress headlining a major Disney production. As the controversy deepened, so did the speculation about Disney's response. Was the company still standing by its Snow White, or had the backlash become too costly to ignore?
Snow White actress Rachel Zegler only a few days ago decided to tell every single person that had a different political opinion than her,
may Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace.
Every time we check in on Disney's upcoming Snow White remake, somehow things get even worse than they were before.
This woman thinks that, the half of America, more than half of America, shouldn't live in peace.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig.
There are growing calls tonight for Disney to fire Rachel Zegler, the star of its widely anticipated Snow White remake. It's because of an anti-Donald Trump post she made after the election, writing, quoting here, "May Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace." Zegler is now apologizing. She writes in a new post, let my emotions get the best of me, and I am sorry, contributed to the negative discourse.
But apparently telling Rachel Zegler to behave normally just isn't an option either. So the other day, in response to the presidential election, Zegler had a very public meltdown on her Instagram stories. She wrote, quote, "F you, Donald Trump." And she proceeded to insult the 75 million Americans who voted for him, quote, "I find myself speechless in the midst of this. Another 4 years of hatred, leading us towards a world I do not want."
Already struggling at the box office, the Snow White debacle became yet another headache for the studio. Rather than quelling the backlash, Zegler's follow-up posts only added fuel to the fire, accusing Trump supporters of enabling harm and blaming Elon Musk's ex, formerly Twitter, for Trump's re-election made things even messier. For Disney, a company that has carefully walked the line of political neutrality to maintain its broad family appeal, this was a nightmare. The silence from Disney was deafening. Unlike previous controversies, such as Gina Carano's firing over social media posts deemed less inflammatory, Disney took no action against Zegler. The double standard was impossible to ignore. Carano was cut from The Mandalorian within days, while Zegler remained untouched. Critics were quick to accuse Disney of hypocrisy, fueling an already growing divide between the studio and its audience. This wasn't the first time Zegler's outspoken nature had caused issues. She had previously drawn backlash for criticizing West Side Story's marketing, reinforcing the perception that she had a habit of stirring controversy. To some, her unfiltered personality was refreshing. To others, it was exhausting. Either way, it made her a lightning rod for criticism, constantly at the center of the latest online firestorm. By the time she issued an apology, the damage was done. Many saw her statement as little more than damage control rather than a sincere reflection. Instead of building anticipation for Snow White, the ongoing controversy only left fans wondering whether Disney had completely lost touch with its audience. And with the company already facing financial struggles, the Snow White saga became yet another symbol of a studio seemingly adrift. Disney, already struggling to regain its footing after a series of underperforming remakes, found itself further alienated from its audience following Rachel Zegler's controversial remarks. When she attempted to apologize, it only made things worse, like throwing water on a grease fire. In a carefully worded statement, Zegler claimed her emotions had gotten the best of her and emphasized the need for peace and understanding. But instead of easing tensions, the apology came across as cold, calculated, and completely disconnected from the frustration fans were feeling. Social media users wasted no time tearing it apart, calling it robotic and insincere, just another PR move rather than a genuine attempt to make amends. Many likened it to the classic non-apology. "I'm sorry if you were offended." Twitter lit up with criticism. Comments like, "This feels like a lecture," "Not an apology," and "She's not sorry. She's just sorry we noticed," flooded the platform. Memes comparing her statement to other botched celebrity apologies went viral, further cementing the perception that Disney had played a heavy hand in crafting her response. Instead of restoring goodwill, both Zegler and Disney faced accusations of prioritizing optics over accountability. But the fallout didn't just damage Zegler's public image, it cast a long shadow over Snow White itself, turning the film into a symbol of Disney's ongoing struggle to connect with its audience. Even before Zegler's comments ignited controversy, the live-action remake was already facing skepticism. The trouble started early. When the teaser trailer dropped, it was met with an overwhelming wave of negativity, racking up over 1.3 million dislikes on YouTube. Fans flooded the comments, criticizing everything from the film's visual effects to its perceived lack of connection to the original. Instead of excitement, the trailer sparked frustration, with many seeing it as yet another sign that Disney had lost its way. Much of the uproar centered on the reimagining of the Seven Dwarfs as a diverse band of magical companions. Disney made the change after actor Peter Dinklage criticized the original story's portrayal of dwarfism, but the move backfired. Advocates for the dwarfism community accused Disney of erasing opportunities for actors with dwarfism, while fans of the classic film felt the charm and whimsy of the original dwarves had been stripped away in favor of unnecessary reinvention. Behind the scenes, things weren't much better. Reports of costly reshoots, delays, and creative disagreements painted a picture of a production in chaos. Insiders suggested that Disney was scrambling to salvage the project, pouring millions into reworking scenes in a desperate attempt to avoid a box office disaster. With a massive $200 million budget, Snow White would need to pull in at least $600 million just to break even, a daunting challenge, especially with calls for boycotts growing louder. The backlash also reflects a broader trend. Audiences are losing patience with Disney's live-action remakes. While films like Cinderella and The Jungle Book found success by balancing nostalgia with fresh storytelling, others, like The Lion King and Mulan, were criticized for feeling hollow and overly calculated. Now, Snow White faces an uphill battle. Can Disney turn the tide? Or is this the moment where audiences finally say enough is enough?
Basically, anyone who voted for him posting on her Instagram that there'll be another 4 years of hatred leaning us towards a world I don't want to live in, claiming that it's leading us towards a world that will be hard to raise my daughter in. And she went even further, warning followers to avoid using Elon Musk's X platform because he supported Donald Trump. Look, she did later apologise for her comments, but it's certainly not the smartest marketing move ahead of this film.
No, I mean, it's a great strategy putting out your leading actress to go ahead and piss off half of the American population and potentially causing a huge backlash from it.
Apparently someone at Disney made a call. Somebody at Disney probably made a call to Rachel Zegler and said, hey, you need to shut your fucking mouth because you are destroying this movie and our reputation when we can't afford this.
She tried to make Snow White really woke, and there was a huge backlash from that. Well, unsurprising.
Career off of just criticizing things. She's always aggrieved about something. They agree with you on this issue. Find something else to criticize, please.
Because of Zegler, and because of her hideous poison, and the poison of wokeism that sort of like led through the project. Look at this.
That is a red flag, just mentally, from a mindset point of view. I would love to live in this world, even if Kamala Harris...
They will fire Gina Carano just for being conservative and sharing conservative values, but then you have
that anyone actually cares what they have to say about this stuff, because they shouldn't. Like, we don't need to hear from actors and artists about who your political candidate should be. You know, it's you're not qualified to have opinions on this stuff, and you shouldn't be trying to like direct people to vote a certain way. You know, for these people, they're there to entertain us. They're not there to lead us.
I think she's an idiot. She's one of the most unlikable people in Hollywood, and that speaks volumes because there's a lot of unlikable people in Hollywood. But she took it to a whole different level. And you are working for Disney. You're working for a company that is trying to cater to, well, should be anyway, trying to cater to families. Now you have this landslide election from President Trump, and there was no way this was going to go over well.
They're talking about all the other major Disney studio productions that are coming out. This is what's coming in. They're telling this to analysts and shareholders. And for the second time in a row, they have not mentioned the live-action remake of the movie that put the Disney company on the frickin' map in 1937. This is just... I don't think this movie's going to happen anymore.
Other recent live-action remakes have struggled to meet expectations, both critically and financially. While The Little Mermaid performed decently at the box office, it failed to capture the cultural impact of the original, leaving many to question whether Disney's remake strategy is sustainable in the long run. Similarly, films like Peter Pan and Wendy and Pinocchio were met with lukewarm reception, reinforcing the idea that simply reimagining beloved classics isn't enough to win over audiences. The heart of the issue, according to critics and fans alike, is that Disney seems more focused on checking off representation boxes or pushing modern messaging rather than telling compelling, timeless stories. Of course, inclusivity and progress are important, but when these elements feel forced rather than organic, they can come across as pandering rather than genuine storytelling. At the same time, Disney's struggles go beyond just remakes. The studio's animated releases, such as Strange World, underperformed significantly, signaling that even original projects aren't immune to audience disinterest. Meanwhile, Pixar, once known for its emotional depth and originality, has seen diminishing returns with films like Lightyear, which failed to resonate with fans in the way that Toy Story once did. The contrast between Disney's approach and the success of other studios highlights the issue even more. Films like Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse have been praised for their fresh storytelling and character development, proving that audiences still crave well-crafted, innovative stories. Disney, on the other hand, appears to be relying too heavily on nostalgia and legacy IPs without fully understanding what made those properties special in the first place. As Snow White approaches its release, the studio finds itself at a crossroads. Will it double down on its current approach? Or will it take the backlash as a sign that something needs to change? Many fans are hoping for the latter, longing for Disney to rediscover the magic that made it the powerhouse of storytelling in the first place. At this point, Snow White isn't just another Disney remake. It's a test of whether the company can recover from a growing disconnect with its audience. Fans who once eagerly awaited every Disney release are now approaching new projects with skepticism, wondering if the studio has lost the magic that made it special. The response to Snow White could be a turning point, either confirming that Disney's approach is out of touch or proving that it can still deliver stories that resonate. For Zegler, the stakes are even higher. Hollywood can be unforgiving, and a single misstep, let alone a series of controversies, can derail a promising career. Some actors have managed to recover from backlash through humility, a well-timed rebrand, or simply letting time pass. But Zegler's situation is different because she hasn't just upset a small group of people, she's alienated Disney fans, industry insiders, and even some of the very people who initially championed her. The key question now is whether she can turn things around. A genuine, thoughtful apology could go a long way in repairing her image, but so far, her attempts to address criticism have only added fuel to the fire. If Snow White flops, it will be much harder for studios to justify casting her in future high-profile projects. Hollywood operates on risk versus reward, and right now, many seem to see Zegler as more of a liability than an asset. Meanwhile, Disney itself has bigger problems than just one actress or one film. The struggles of The Little Mermaid, Peter Pan and Wendy, and Pinocchio prove that something deeper is at play. The company's recent strategy of reworking old classics rather than creating new, compelling stories is wearing thin. Fans don't just want live-action remakes. They want stories that feel as meaningful and magical as the ones they fell in love with years ago. The real question is whether Disney is willing to change course. Will it continue prioritizing corporate messaging over storytelling? Or will it listen to its audience and recapture the magic that made it the most beloved name in entertainment? Right now, the future of Snow White, Rachel Zegler, and even Disney itself feels uncertain. One thing is clear, though. Something needs to change and fast. At this point, Rachel Zegler finds herself at a critical crossroads. While Hollywood has seen plenty of stars fall from grace and make triumphant comebacks, the key factor is always whether they can rebuild trust with both the industry and audiences. Right now, Zegler's biggest challenge isn't just the backlash, it's the perception that she's alienated the very people who once supported her. Her firm response to the Kit Connor dating rumors showed her frustration with the constant speculation surrounding her personal life, but it also revealed a larger issue: the increasing scrutiny of everything she says and does. In the age of social media, every comment, post, and reaction is analyzed under a microscope, and for someone already facing controversy, that only makes things more complicated. But the bigger problem is the political storm she's caught in. The entertainment industry often leans progressive, but there's still an unspoken rule about managing public perception. Stars who become too polarizing, especially those involved in heated political debates, can find themselves losing favor with both studios and audiences. The fact that media figures like Megyn Kelly are openly calling for Disney to drop her only adds to the tension. Even if Disney doesn't make any official changes to Snow White, the fact that executives are reportedly worried about how she's affecting their brand suggests that they're keeping a close eye on the situation. So, where does Zegler go from here? If she hopes to maintain her place in Hollywood, she'll need to shift the narrative, fast. That means stepping away from controversy, focusing on her craft, and proving that she can be a leading actress without the baggage. Some actors have successfully done this by taking on smaller, critically acclaimed roles to rebuild goodwill, while others have rebranded themselves through carefully managed PR efforts. The question is whether Zegler can recognize the need for damage control before it's too late. As for Disney, Snow White represents more than just one movie. It's a test of whether the company can still connect with audiences in a meaningful way. If the film underperforms or becomes another PR disaster, it could force Disney to rethink not just its approach to casting, but its entire remake strategy. Fans are growing tired of rehashed classics that don't capture the spirit of the originals, and Snow White could be the final straw. Ultimately, both Zegler and Disney have a lot riding on this film. Whether they can turn things around remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, the stakes have never been higher.
Be emotional. I'm also really tired. I never wanted to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I had. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats. And maybe that's a weird takeaway.
Even more bad news for Disney's Snow White remake coming out next year.
I'm a narcissist.
There's another Snow White movie competing with it. It's called Snow White and the Evil Queen, and the producer promises to be more faithful to the spirit of the original animated classic.
Walt once said about Snow White, and me, I thought it was the perfect story. Unfortunately, the company Disney founded doesn't agree with their founder and visionary.
Once upon a time.
Who is this? I like the beginning.
In time a prince would come. Once upon a time, but now that time
Brings me back to my childhood.
is gone.
No freaking way! No!
Yo! Brett Cooper?
And that's me. I'm Snow White.
It's so Cooper, known for her unapologetic views and rejection of woke narratives, is stepping into a role that many thought belonged to Rachel Zegler, who had her own controversial vision for the iconic princess. While Zegler pushed for a modernized Snow White, one that downplayed the classic love story and reimagined the character as an independent leader, Cooper represents a stark contrast, aligning more with the traditional fairy tale approach that many longtime Disney fans wanted to see. The switch, if it happens, would mark a major shift in how Disney approaches casting and storytelling. Zegler's outspoken comments about the original Snow White film, calling it outdated and dismissing its romantic elements, were met with significant backlash from fans who felt she was disregarding the heart of the beloved classic. This controversy, combined with her polarizing political statements, led to speculation that Disney might be looking for a way to quietly distance itself from her. If Cooper is indeed stepping into the role, it could signal that Disney is rethinking its approach, possibly trying to win back fans who have been vocal about their disappointment with recent remakes. It would also reflect a broader industry trend where studios are beginning to recognize that audiences want stories that respect the source material rather than rework it to fit modern ideological trends. However, nothing has been officially confirmed yet. If Disney does move forward with a cast change, it will be interesting to see how they frame the decision, whether they acknowledge the backlash or simply present it as a creative shift. Either way, the Snow White saga is proving to be one of the most telling examples of Disney's current identity crisis, where the battle between modernization and tradition is playing out in real time. Clip 6. These comments only deepen the divide between Zegler and Disney's core audience. For many fans, Snow White wasn't just another animated film. It was a cherished classic that had stood the test of time. The The 1937 version, Disney's very first animated feature, was a landmark in cinema history, setting the foundation for the Disney magic that generations grew up loving. By dismissing the original's themes of love, romance, and happily ever after, Zegler alienated those who saw the film as a timeless fairy tale rather than an outdated relic. Her remark about Prince Charming being a creepy stalker especially struck a nerve, as it reinforced the perception that she didn't respect the material or the fans who adored it. Instead of framing Snow White as an evolution of the classic story, her comments made it seem as if she was outright rejecting everything that made it beloved in the first place. This controversy only escalated when clips of her interviews resurfaced on social media, fueling backlash among Disney loyalists and even general audiences who felt the studio was losing its way. While some argued that modernizing Snow White was a necessary step in keeping the story relevant for today's viewers, others saw it as an unnecessary and forced reinvention, one that stripped the tale of its core themes rather than allowing them to evolve naturally. With the film still on the horizon, Disney now finds itself in a precarious position. The backlash against Snow White has gone beyond just a film controversy. It's become a symbol of the growing frustration with Disney's recent direction. Many feel the studio has been prioritizing social messaging over storytelling, pushing modern narratives into classic tales instead of crafting original stories with strong, diverse characters. Whether Disney can turn things around remains to be seen. If Snow White underperforms, it could force the studio to rethink its approach to remakes. Fans aren't just rejecting Snow White because it's different. They're rejecting it because it feels like a departure from the magic, wonder, and heart that once defined Disney's storytelling. The question now is whether Disney will listen.
Over for Disney, because the conservative media company Daily Wire is making their very own rendition of Snow White, starring Brett Cooper. It's a Snow White showdown, y'all. And not just that, they're also launching a rival children's network called Bent Key. And whether or not you're excited by the prospect of watching entertainment produced by a conservative company, I have to commend Daily Wire for putting their money where their mouth is.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on Sid. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
Like, sometimes I wonder, how do they cast these people for those movies?
What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Who here thought they had permission to say anything critical?
You had one job. Just take the source material and just remake it. That's it, and you will win. Everybody's gonna go watch the movie.
Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro are doing their own live-action remake of Snow White with Brett Cooper as Snow White because she's like West End trained, right? So she's a very well-trained, supposedly a very well-trained actor who can sing, apparently. It's like the triple threat, podcast, act, sing.
Right.
And they announced it the other week, and it's going to be coming out next year.
God, I hope they'd slay Disney.
Cool. I'm literally the one in that trailer, and I'm still so excited, and I get chills. There I am, Gary. There I am. The whole thing is just so cool. The moment when the music starts to crescendo as I turn around. When I first heard the music, I was like, stop right there. That's just it's so amazing.
Brett Cooper, a rising
These comments only deepen the divide between Zegler and Disney's core audience. For many fans, Snow White wasn't just another animated film. It was a cherished classic that had stood the test of time. The 1937 version, Disney's very first animated feature, was a landmark in cinema history, setting the foundation for the Disney magic that generations grew up loving. By dismissing the original's themes of love, romance, and happily ever after, Zegler alienated those who saw the film as a timeless fairy tale rather than an outdated relic. Her remark about Prince Charming being a creepy stalker especially struck a nerve, as it reinforced the perception that she didn't respect the material or the fans who adored it. Instead of framing Snow White as an evolution of the classic story, Her comments made it seem as if she was outright rejecting everything that made it beloved in the first place. This controversy only escalated when clips of her interviews resurfaced on social media, fueling backlash among Disney loyalists and even general audiences who felt the studio was losing its way. While some argued that modernizing Snow White was a necessary step in keeping the story relevant for today's viewers, others saw it as an unnecessary and forced reinvention, one that stripped the tale of its core themes rather than allowing them to evolve naturally. With the film still on the horizon, Disney now finds itself in a precarious position. The backlash against Snow White has gone beyond just a film controversy. It's become a symbol of the growing frustration with Disney's recent direction. Many feel the studio has been prioritizing social messaging over storytelling, pushing modern narratives into classic tales instead of crafting original stories with strong, diverse characters. Whether Disney can turn things around remains to be seen. If Snow White underperforms, it could force the studio to rethink its approach to remakes. Fans aren't just rejecting Snow White because it's different. They're rejecting it because it feels like a departure from the magic, wonder, and heart that once defined Disney storytelling. The question now is whether Disney will listen.
Backlash surrounding the upcoming Disney live adaptation of Snow White, the market is primed for someone to step in and tell a proper Snow White story. The Daily Wire has picked up the ball and ran with it, releasing a teaser trailer for Snow White and the Evil Queen, which will release on their streaming service called Bent Key.
He wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Sounds great. Here's our Snow White.
By 2030, it's predicted that 45% of women will be unmarried and childless. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because we've been told that, men are trash and that our career is the only thing that matters and that marriage and children will inhibit that, which is unnatural. That is biologically unnatural for women.
That does sound.
For many, Snow White represents a simpler, more innocent time in storytelling, a fairy tale that captured the wonder of love, kindness, and magic without needing to push a larger agenda. Zegler's desire to modernize the story, making it more politically correct or woke, was seen as a direct challenge to the original's legacy. To critics, it wasn't just about removing Prince Charming. It was about tampering with a beloved piece of cinematic history that, in their eyes, didn't need fixing at all. The backlash against Zegler's version of Snow White reflects a broader frustration with Hollywood's recent trend of reinterpreting classics through a modern ideological lens rather than letting them stand as the timeless tales they were meant to be. Fans argue that there's a difference between updating a story to make it feel fresh and completely rewriting its core themes. While films like Beauty and the Beast, 2017, made small changes to Belle's character to enhance her agency without erasing the essence of the original, Snow White appears to be taking a more drastic approach, one that fundamentally alters the story's DNA. This disconnect is why so many fans feel alienated. Instead of feeling like a celebration of Snow White, this remake seems to be rejecting what made the original special in the first place. Zegler's own words, calling the 1937 film outdated and dismissing Prince Charming as a creepy stalker, only reinforced the belief that she didn't respect the source material. Whether intentional or not, her comments gave the impression that she viewed Snow White not as a classic to be honored, but as a flawed narrative that needed fixing. The controversy surrounding Snow White has now grown into something bigger than just a film. It's become a litmus test for Disney's current approach to storytelling. Longtime fans are asking whether the studio still values the timeless magic that made its name, or if it's more focused on reworking beloved tales to fit modern trends. With Disney already facing diminishing box office returns on recent remakes like The Little Mermaid and Peter Pan and Wendy, Snow White could be a make-or-break moment for how the company handles its legacy moving forward. Ultimately, the real question isn't whether Snow White can be updated. It's whether Disney can do so in a way that respects both its past and its audience. Right now, many feel that answer is no.
Save for the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. There's a big focus on her love story, with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
Casting the classic love interest in a sinister light that few fans appreciated. These comments weren't viewed as bold or empowering by much of.
It seems like you're discussing the contrast between Brett Cooper's casting and Rachel Zegler's approach to Snow White, along with a broader cultural debate over Hollywood's handling of classic stories. Here's a continuation and expansion of your text. Her casting is being celebrated as a victory for those who feel that Disney has taken things too far in its efforts to modernize and rewrite its own history. Unlike Rachel Zegler, who sought to distance Snow White from its traditional roots, Cooper has been outspoken about her desire to preserve the classic elements of the fairy tale, especially the iconic prince and the happily ever after love story. This choice to honor the original narrative has struck a chord with fans who are growing weary of Hollywood's constant modern makeovers of beloved stories. Cooper's portrayal is more than just another casting decision. It's being seen as a bold statement. The Daily Wire, in casting her, isn't simply selecting an actress. They're sending a message loud and clear that they believe audiences crave the timeless magic of the original, untouched by today's political trends. For many, this move feels like a rejection of the politically correct version Disney had been pushing, a version that some fans felt strayed too far from the essence of the classic fairy tale. Fans who have long felt alienated by Hollywood's recent reimaginings of traditional stories are rallying behind Cooper. They view her as a breath of fresh air, someone who respects and understands the importance of preserving these stories as they were originally told. The casting of Cooper signals to those fans that not every beloved narrative needs to be reshaped to fit a modern agenda. It's a reassurance that there's still room for magic, romance, and happily ever afters without the need to pander to current cultural sensibilities. And boy, has the internet responded. Social media platforms are flooded with comments supporting Cooper, with many claiming that this version of Snow White will be the real Snow White. Memes mocking Zegler's princeless version have gone viral, with hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite trending. Meanwhile, others accuse Disney of caving to the pressure of identity politics, pointing out that Cooper's casting signals a return to classic, untouched storytelling, something many believe Hollywood desperately needs. But this isn't just about who gets to wear the iconic dress. It's a full-on cultural clash. On one side, you have fans who are done with Hollywood's woke reimaginings of their favorite stories. On the other, you have those defending Zegler's progressive approach, arguing that it's time for fairy tales to evolve. The battle lines are drawn, and Snow White is at the center of a much bigger war over what stories should look like in today's world. Whether you're Team Rachel Zegler, with her bold modern twist, or you're all in for Brett Cooper's return to the classic fairy tale, one thing's for sure, this battle is far from over. What do you think? Should Snow White stick to its roots? Or is it time for a complete overhaul? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the debate going. And hey, if you want to stay in the loop on all the latest Hollywood controversies and movie drama, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Woke Informant, and ring the bell so you never miss out on the next big story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. This version keeps the dramatic tone and makes it feel like a social media or YouTube script. Let me know if you'd like it adjusted or expanded further. Here's a rewritten version of your text with a smoother flow and refined language. The version Disney was pushing felt, to many fans, like a departure from the heart of the classic fairy tale. Longtime Disney supporters, frustrated with Hollywood's trend of reimagining traditional stories, are rallying behind Brett Cooper's casting. To them, she represents a return to the timeless magic of Snow White, a story they believe should be preserved rather than reshaped to fit modern narratives. Cooper's casting sends a clear message. Not every beloved tale needs to be altered to align with contemporary cultural shifts. It reassures fans that there's still a place for classic romance, magic, and happily ever afters, without the need to cater to current ideological trends.
hate the movie. I think it's absolute garbage.
Are you talking about something else?
No, I'm talking about Snow White. The funny thing is, I only watched like 2 minutes of the cartoon 20 years ago, and I ended up taking a hammer and breaking my TV because I thought it was so awful.
So does she have a love interest in this movie?
Hell no! This is in 1937, and we're not in a Taylor Swift love song. There is no love story. She's an independent female lead. She ends up joining a pyramid scheme, and she becomes the world's biggest girl boss.
I'm Snow White, and I'm not some weak little princess. I'm a boss babe, and I'm here to overthrow
the evil queen?
The patriarchy, actually.
But Queen Grimhilda is a wicked witch.
Okay, that's offensive. Okay, those are rumors spread by insecure, toxic little men.
But she hired a huntsman to unalive you.
Iconic. She woke up today and chose violence. I love it.
Someday my prince will come.
And the internet has certainly taken notice. Social media is buzzing with support for Cooper, with many declaring this version to be the true Snow White. Memes mocking the princeless adaptation have gone viral, and hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite are trending. On the other hand, critics argue that Disney caved to pressure, signaling a retreat from progressivism in favor of nostalgia. This isn't just about casting, it's a cultural battleground. On one side are those who are fed up with Hollywood's modern takes on their favorite stories, while on the other are those who believe fairy tales should evolve with the times. The lines have been drawn, and Snow White has become the latest flashpoint in the ongoing debate over storytelling in today's world. So, where do you stand? Should Snow White remain true to its original roots, or is it time for a complete overhaul? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going. And if you want to stay updated on all the latest Hollywood controversies and movie drama, don't forget to like, subscribe to Woke Informant, and ring the bell so you never miss out on the next big story. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
News! Deadline reports the Daily Wire is making a live-action Snow White movie starring conservative YouTuber Brett Cooper. Watch the teaser.
Ben Shapiro is apparently putting the white in Snow White because the Daily Wire is remaking the Disney classic Snow White, starring conservative YouTuber Brett Cooper. The studio is said to be very excited about making this film with conservative values such as friendship, love, and unconsensual kissing.
Something I am curious on is how faithful they are to the original story.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not like campy or anything like that.
Yes. Something I find interesting, when you look at all the other Snow White live action.
Can't really say the same thing about Rachel Zegler. You know, it'd be one thing if Snow White turned around and put a MAGA hat on or some bullshit. That's not, people don't want propaganda on the other side. They just want propaganda-free entertainment.
It's Hollywood, baby. And that really is the main point. We're not trying to turn Snow White into something that it's not. We're not trying to turn Snow White into a MAGA conservative movie. We're just trying to represent the values that Snow White is based in, the timeless values that we all loved growing up that are sadly being forgotten in this new adaptation.
And now this is competition, right? This is America. If you don't want to see the woke Disney film, you have every opportunity now to go see this Daily Wire film.
Variety is the spice of life. Choice is great. Some kids, parents, families, young women might prefer the Rachel Zegler version. Some might want to watch the more stereotypical prince and princess fantasy or whatever it is, and they can watch the original, or they can watch the Daily Wire version, or you can watch all of them and decide what you like best, and that's fine and good. I think it is worth commenting on that the Daily Wire is doing something that's very interesting in trying to specifically, instead of just complaining that mainstream pop culture and entertainment is hostile to conservative values.
Now, just like all of the other remakes that have basically involved some cultural changes, the Daily Wire didn't like the live-action remake for Snow White, which is starring a woman, an actress who's 22 years old. Her name's Rachel Zegler, and she is Colombian and Polish. She considers herself a white Latina, but I really think that some of the criticism toward her coming from conservatives isn't just about Snow White being cast by someone who doesn't have like translucent skin. I think it also has to do with some of the comments that she's made about the movie itself while she's out there talking about it. We'll get to that in just a moment. But nonetheless, the Daily Wire decided to provide their own version, their response, if you will, to the live action remake of the Snow White movie.
It's time for some shameless self-promotion with the Daily Wire. And I'm being honest when I say it's shameless because I was the most excited person about this. I want to get involved somehow. I'm not sure how. I keep pitching myself, but they just don't want me.
What is this movie all about? Like, what started it off? Where did you get the first idea for it? And what are you hoping to accomplish with this one?
So we got the idea for it literally the day that Rachel Zegler did an interview in which she said that she hated the original Snow White and wanted to rip the guts out of it.
Weird.
And then Disney released those ridiculous cast photos of dwarves that were not dwarves, the multiracial, multi-ethnic, tall people and one dwarf. This is how we make decisions at the Daily Wire. I literally just emailed that to my business partner, Jeremy Boring. And I was like, we should do something like this. And Jeremy's like, okay, we're just going to make Snow White, but we're going to do it to all the specs, with music, with singing, with the original storyline in classic fashion that imbibes from the original well of the values. Specifically because if Disney wants to cede that field to us, we'd be fools not to take it. And we're kind of shocked by the fact that no other studio has done that. I mean, just on a pure market basis.
Wait a minute, that's not woke Snow White. Isn't that Brett Cooper from the Daily